Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today. This is the Holistic-Yogi, and I am your host, Kamala Ingrid. Today, I have a wonderful guest, and her name is Dr. Eeks, and she is all the way from New York.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doc. How are you? And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
So, introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about yourself. And
yeah, sure. So I'm Dr. Eeks, and that's kind of a nickname that's stuck in med school.
I love it.
My full name is Erin Stair, but there's three other doctors in my family, and everyone was Dr. Stair. So I'm like, Dr. Eeks kind of took off. I went to medical school, and while I was there, I kind of realized, gosh, you know what? Like, we need to do a lot more for people before they get into these chronic states in the hospital. And that is really where I started to kind of become more interested in the social determinants of health, holistic health, mind, body, spirit connection.
Nice.
And so from there, I got a scholarship and I went to NYU for
congrats.
Awesome. For my master's of public health. While I was there, I did research on the factors leading to emerging infectious diseases, which is kind of what we're in now, right? This pandemic. And then I opened up a wellness website where I wanted to kind of share my opinions on wellness.
Beautiful.
And I also host my own podcast, Causes or Cures, because I feel like scientific communication is so important, and also, not censoring dissenting views.
Yes.
Letting people be heard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. Yes. And how do you find it since you've been basically very busy during this pandemic? I'm presuming, right?
I'm working that's the work I'm doing now. Like, my day job is working on the federal response to the national response to COVID-19, and that's been it's been very rewarding, but it's been very eye-opening also. Kind of like these glaring areas where we could do more holistic stuff, right? Like, a lot of that matters for building the immune system, to getting in better shape, reducing stress. But we haven't, I'm definitely more focused, but I think it just shows like, wow, there's so much more room here for the whole approach. Yeah.
What's the number one thing you would give our listeners about during this pandemic, since it's worldwide? What is something that you would say, and from what you've seen, is key factor to keeping ourselves kind of safe from it? What would you say is a key factor in this?
So first and foremost, the connection with obesity is massive. It's so significant in terms of your risk of being hospitalized. It actually becomes more significant in the younger age groups, even in children.
Really?
Yeah. So I think that's a massive issue. Of course, addressing obesity requires such a holistic approach on the individual level and the population level. I mean, we have to start taking on the food industry. We have to look at some of these neighborhoods and put more green space there, create more options for people to live healthier. So I think that's been the most, because, like minority groups have been more affected than white people with this pandemic. And that's sad. And then if you look at it, they're like, well, yeah, because go ahead.
No, when you say minority, like, for example, versus the Caucasians, it's like, why? What do you think is making that change? What is causing that variation of
I mean, I think it's the social determinants of health. I think access to healthcare. I think even trust in the healthcare system might differ between groups. But and also just having access to things that are healthier. And so like public health crosses over for me into wellness. And sometimes I don't and I joke a lot when I say wellness is a luxury brand. But I say that because like people are always kind of selling something, and celebrities are selling some kind of fancy diet. And I'm like, okay, but somebody in who's living paycheck to paycheck is not going to be able to get that. So how can that person live a healthier life?
Right.
Get a healthier immune system, right? So they can better fight off these viruses, get in better shape, and do it on a shoestring budget. So that's where I think that idea of holism, but like make it affordable. So not just like the celebrity people, can have access to it.
Exactly. I totally agree with that, because one thing I've noticed on my end, and as a holistic teacher and being a yogi for all my life, basically, since I
Yeah.
was a kid. And I live very, very, when I say clean diet, you know, and I'm very much either vegan, sometimes vegetarian, depending on, I do
Right.
like my eggs, and I like
Yeah.
sometimes a little here and there cheese, but for the
Yeah.
most part, I eat very vegan.
Yeah.
And I find myself, I drink a lot of water, cucumber water. I love that. You know, I just keep myself in a very healthy. I go run every day, do my yoga every
Yeah.
day. I live very much at a sense of try to keep myself very grounded as much as I can and
Yes.
stress free. You know, I'm not saying my job can't get a little bit hectic, but I know when to stop
Yeah.
and, you know, de-stress from all that.
Yeah.
And I find, you know, I know people don't like it. My family has a hard time, you know, when I tell them I don't take the, you know, I haven't taken the COVID, but I
Yeah.
don't go out exposing myself into the
Yeah.
massive crowd. I just go to the store with my mask and come right back out.
Yeah.
And I've been very healthy, you know, to this day. I don't have a problem. So I know that it has a lot to do with how well you take care of yourself, as long as you're not exposing yourself or eating unhealthy. And that was my beliefs, kind of like what you've been saying. So, but when you say obesity in children, that concerns me a little because I know that we have that. How young have you found the statistic with children? What was the youngest that have been obese and been in that COVID issue?
Yeah, so they're still gathering data on kids, especially, you know, like these new variants might affect kids more. But it seems there was an article in Nature, which is a really good journal, and they talk about like obesity really seems to be an underlying factor in making kids get sicker.
Wow.
And so, but we've been seeing these trends, like right now, 70% of the US population is either overweight or obese, and it's getting bigger. Like that's 70%. So that's like the majority, right? So right there, we have to say, and there's nothing wrong. I know there's like a movement to accept, you know, the fat positivity and all that, but I think it's also important to recognize health risks and to be able to talk about them. It has nothing to do with self-worth or anything like that. It's just right. But I think we still have to talk about those issues. And now what we're seeing is like an increase in obesity in younger generations. So some people think that kids, because of the issues that come with obesity, their parents might actually outlive them. And that's like, when you think about that, it's crazy. And then, you know, as you know, and I mean, I've had periods where I struggled with my weight, I've struggled with eating. I had an eating disorder. I totally understand
where they're coming from. Yeah,
I get it. And I get how hard it is and how cruel those outside comments can be. And it's awful. And so I think we do need more of a positive mindset, like an approach to obesity that considers perspectives from all sides to like try to make it as balanced and as empathic as can be. But we do have to address it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it also stems from home, because being in this business for so long, and being around all different kinds, all walks of life, from, you know, and I'm looking at all different cultures as well that I've worked with. I found that it does take to educate yourself at home, because I found also parents that don't like to cook or don't know how to cook or don't know. So the quickest thing is, let's just go down the street and pick up something. And that kind of food, you know, fast food it doesn't take long before your calories are bumped up, your intake of salt is up, and depending on your heritage, you know, your lineage, you either have cholesterols that are going to spike up very fast. If you're taking medication, then that's not going to help it, because that can also spike up. Just one little bit of sugar can also instantly spike it up. And I've seen that, where I've seen adults don't eat very well. Now they have children and they don't even know how to educate their kids. All they do is take them on the same whirlwind spin of, you know, McDonald's, you know, Chipotle's. And now I'm thinking, okay, yes, some of these fast food chains are trying to jump into the healthy realm, but at the end, it's still not the same as eating something from home.
Oh, it's definitely not the same. And I think that's where I think there's such a space for wellness coaches, even within the traditional medical community, because doctors, like, they're treating the like gushing chest wounds, right? Like that's what you're trained to do,
Right.
like the serious stuff. But like to address the stuff that happens over years, you know, to get you to these chronic states, there's a real place for wellness coaches, holistic coaches, and they should totally embrace that and help people pay for it. You know, help insurance companies. You know, they
that's
probably,
a racket.
Yeah, they're like,
that's another podcast. That's a racket. Oh my God, it is so true though. It is. By the time they pay what they have to pay for the month, they find themselves going to a doctor and not even getting close to being able to target their issue, because they have to come back again or see a specialist now.
Yeah,
they bounce them around, and I'm thinking,
I mean, we're terrible at prevention. And so many people have said that to me, and they asked me during this pandemic, because like I'm working on the pandemic response, and they said, well, why hasn't there been this major movement towards addressing obesity? And I said, well, it's because, you know, public health people are very aware of this issue. The CDC is very aware of this issue, but you have to deal with what's right in front of you, right? So like if these people are getting really sick, that's the problem. You know, if they're getting this virus and they're ending up on ventilators, and that's going to cut into what that hospital is able to do for other people, and then, you know, access and right. So it snowballs. So you have to deal with the populations in front of you. However, especially right now, as things are starting to open up, like I would love to see like Dr. Fauci get on TV one day and be like, okay, guys, this is a huge wake up call, right? Now we know obesity contributes to a lot of health issues, but definitely this COVID, I mean, it's so much worse. It's an inflammatory state. Let's really try to help each other tackle this problem, you know, just to like, I mean,
it's just sad. I think we have Big Pharma is big in this scenario, because I mean, I was listening to a podcast with Dr. Wheeler, and he's a holistic doctor, and he went into med school, and he ended up getting out of it because he decided to go all holistic because
well, your hands are, you have to follow.
Right, you have to follow what the rules are. You no longer can really see your patient. They become a number. And we know it. When you go to a doctor, what happens? You're in and you're right back out. You know, and the first thing they do is prescribe us some medication. Oh, you have an issue? Okay, here, take this, and this will heal. And I'm like, it's not about that. Get to the source. They don't go into the root of the cause, and that becomes an issue. So I find it, holistic doctors, you have to pay out of pocket. So what happens with people that don't have the means for that?
They never, well, they can't afford it. They don't go. So it is a problem. And it's I mean, Big Pharma, it controls so much. I just did a podcast where, you know, the research agenda, which ends up, the dominant research agenda, which ends up kind of dictating what gets put in a journal, what gets put in front of a primary care doctor, what kind of may change or tweak standards of care. And Big Pharma controls the majority of that. So it's when you look at what they're putting in the research agenda, which is, by the way, tied into academic institutions, medical schools, it's based on profit. What is going to be the most profitable? And so now we're seeing, instead of focusing on blockbuster drugs, which kind of, sorry if that was me, which kind of like hit their, like, you know, I guess their peak, they're now starting to look more like niche buster drugs, like for very rare diseases, orphan diseases, because they've noticed, oh, we can make a huge profit on those, right? So like they can study something comes out, and then like make the price sky high, of course. So it's a real problem. They control almost every aspect of the medical system. And this is why I always tell people, I was like, you know what, like there's so much distrust. There's a lot of good doctors out there, first of all. There's a lot of good conventional doctors out there. I have to say that. Oh yeah, it's like anything. You have your you have your good and you got your bad, but unfortunately, you know, it's the bad ones that kind of ruin it for the good ones. And that's in everything. It's like it's the bad strawberry. But I think where I would like to see them, everybody's afraid to say stuff today because there's so much censorship, and that drives me nuts. but I want to see people, I want to see these doctors, and I'm going to do a video on this because I feel so strongly about this issue. Instead of constantly calling out the essential oils lady, like, you know, that's the essential, right? We all hear about that, the essential oils lady. Call out Big Pharma from time to time. Like, you're ignoring like everything they do, and you're calling out the essential oils lady. And if you look at who's probably hurt more people, right? Is it going to be the essential oils lady or Big Pharma? I would put all my smart money on Big Pharma, but you guys never call them out. And why is that? Why you're afraid? You don't want to bite the hand that feeds you? Because the system could be so much better if they lost their, I mean, even reduce their influence, which is absolutely massive.
Right, so. Right. I totally agree with that. I am 100%, I back you up on that aspect. I find it very, but it is very difficult because even those that do speak out find themselves, they get in trouble or they get censored out. I've had a couple of people that I followed, one recently, and he's speaking out with everything that's going on in Israel and with Palestine and in Israel. You know, that whole thing, and you know, he's also taking film places that are having issues. Like New York recently had an outburst, you know, with that, and he had that on his camera, spoke about, you know, his piece about it, and he's already getting, you know, the platform is getting on him for it.
Yeah, and see, that's,
you know, so you can't really, you know, speak your mind.
No, without losing your job, right? Like,
and he's a big someone, you know, he's a big person, someone that, you know, but by speaking his mind, he's yet not that powerful yet to that level to where they can't, you know, like Trump was, you know, it took a lot for them to finally get him off a platform. But, you know, like I said, so he's not at that level, but he's still enough to where people know who he is. And with that, you got the platforms wanting to silence him.
Yeah, I see. And big tech has become so powerful now that like they can really, really manipulate narratives. And so like some of the doctors I've had on my podcast, brilliant giants. One was a vaccinologist who actually brought the Ebola vaccine to fruition. But he and a bunch of writers were recently going to do an article in Frontiers Journal on repurposed drugs for early at-home treatment for COVID-19, which is another topic that's been like completely, you can't talk about that. If you talk about that, you're against vaccines, which is absurd. But and they put all these editors, these guest editors, giant academics, all highly published, and the entire episode, the entire journal got pulled. Yeah, and it's just like, what? Like, why is that? So there's stuff going on that's like, and I'm all for, like, if somebody's being racist online, spreading hate, like, that's not adding at all to the dialogue. But like sharing different perspectives in respectful ways, like that's something like I will not, especially like scientists, just, you know, sharing their different points of view.
Well, yeah, that's how it should be. I mean, everybody should be able to be respectful to your point of view. Yeah. Whether you agree, you can agree to disagree, but you know, you should be able to voice your opinion without it affecting the other. Sorry, there's sirens here. It's like New York City. That's okay. That's New York. I was born in New York, so I get it. Okay. I'm in Florida now, so it's a whole different story, but it's a lot peaceful and tranquil over here. But
it's like New York. It's New York.
I know. I don't miss that though, because it's like you would get that all hours. It didn't matter. Oh. Oh yeah. So, I do like my silence here, so that's the good part.
Oh my gosh, I know, I crave it. Sometimes when I go home to Pennsylvania, like I see like the stars in the sky, and then I'm like,
yeah, you don't see that in New York.
No, you don't see it at all.
But it still has this little. It's like a spice, you know. You still love it. There's something about New York that you can't.
Energy, the people, the diversity. I mean, it's great. Like,
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what actually, do you have any other family members also that are doctors as well? I
do. Well, my dad's a veterinarian. Yeah. So he's in Pennsylvania. He's still practicing. My older sister, she's an internist and a pediatrician. Nice. She's Yeah, so she does a lot of work with folks who have issues with addiction and that kind of thing.
Nice. Okay.
And my other sister is a doctor of physical therapy who's very big into myofascial release and
Very nice.
very like, yeah, holistically minded and probably knows anatomy better than all of us.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you have a lot basically
Yeah.
a family of doctors. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that kind of like what inspired you to get into the whole healing?
Yeah, I mean, I've always like it was like a small town. My dad's like kind of like a small town veterinarian, but we were always involved in kind of what he was doing.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, so that healing nature was cultivated from a very young age. And just, and just his approach is something I admire so much. And I try to cultivate that, like just such compassion, such empathy, and humility. Like, yeah, I mean, so I know he works with animals, but like his approach to healing is just something I like so admire.
Yeah, no, that's it. You have to be humble in order to work with people and animals, especially with animals. You can't communicate like you do with people, but in a way they sense your energy. So it's the same. It's very much more, I think, more hands-on in a sense, because you're really going at a deeper level, whereas humans can take it for granted and kind of just talk the talk, whatever.
But today, because we have, speaking of holistic, right, we have this whole another epidemic of loneliness, which only got worse during COVID-19 with all the lockdowns, which, addiction, all of that, opioids, all of that got worse. So like the connection people have with their animals now is sometimes like the most significant connection. Even my dad touches on that. So like when an animal gets close to like their end of the life, it's just like, it can be so much more traumatizing for a person, who may not have anybody else. So it's just,
it's beautiful because I mean, they do learn to, like, animals have a way of healing you.
Oh God.
Because they don't hold anything back like us humans will resent or judge you. Yeah, if you don't, you shouldn't, but you have people that will. And so but with the animal, you can scold them for something they did, and with the same respect, they come right back to you.
I love all the same.
They still love you the same way. It's like, and you wake up and they have a smile right there. And it's very beautiful. I mean, we should learn from them, because it should be the same applied to us humans who we're on the top of the chain, in the food chain, from all of them. And we should be able to replicate. I always used to tell my daughter, it's like basically, and it's funny because she's like, oh, I hate humans, I love animals, because she learned that animals are just very joyful to be around, and they care, they love you. If you're sick, they stay by your side, they nurture you in their own way. And I think that we have the capacity to do the same, and they just have a way with humans that is just beautiful. And with other animals, I see them sometimes integrate with one another, when they come to me, if they're in a good place, in a good space, of course, because you have your abused ones out there. Oh, that's beautiful. So you've been doing, what do you see yourself doing down the road? And I heard you also have a wellness web, right?
I do. I have a wellness website. So it started out as just kind of like my approach to wellness, which is like, again, my goal is to make it as inclusive as possible and as affordable as possible. So kind of like sharing those ideas. And I've written 2 books that I sell through that website. And one is kind of like my own struggle. It's like it reads like a fictional novel, but it kind of describes my own struggle, kind of like a breakdown, and how I had to get through that to get through a breakthrough, and like, breakdowns.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. Well, like, so this kind of it's called Manic Kingdom. And when I wrote it, so I was very depressed in medical school, and I had an eating disorder. I had bulimia.
Okay.
And I just spiraled out of control. And I went to see the school psychiatrist, and the school psychiatrist just handed me an antidepressant, which, I'm like, in medical school, you have to study all the time. And I'm like, okay, I'll take this pill. But I started to notice after I took that pill, I felt different. I felt like somebody put like a bag over me, and my emotion, I always tell people my emotions felt like they were shoes stuck in gum. I could not express myself. And I like to be creative. I'm a writer. And so it was difficult. So that was the first part. And then then I just couldn't think right. My mind just kind of spiraled out of control. But I kept taking the medicine because I thought it was going to help me. Because at that point, I wasn't really questioning anything. I was just like, oh, this should help me. And so it kind of put me into what I think, I don't know for sure, but I think it put me into a manic phase.
Wow.
And I did something abrupt. I actually quit school, flew across the country, met a man randomly on the beach, and started a romance. And it was all just, I felt like I was out of my body. Like,
right.
Like your head is somewhere around you and you're just making impulsive decision after impulsive decision. So I was able to get, the book describes that experience. And, but also kind of like this man actually helped me with my eating disorder too. There's that part of it.
So he came into your life for a reason as well. So there's a purpose to it. Yeah.
Right. And so like when people say, do you hate this person? I'm like, no, because like you said earlier, there's good and there's bad in like every experience that we have. So I do honor that. I do honor the good. I know that like it could have been really bad, but I got out of it. But then as I analyzed what happened there, that's really why I was like, wait a minute, I have an eating disorder and, you know, she said I had depression, but like, you know, I'm also not sleeping. So like, why am I just being handed a pill? And so that kind of too, like that personal experience really set me up for just kind of an awakening. Like, you know, no, like I have got to take some time to like really cultivate self-awareness and really figure out what's going on with me. So, yeah, that's what that first.
No, but that's beautiful because I look at it as that set you wouldn't be where you are today. And also it's like when we self-analyze ourselves, and writing this book is a beautiful way of putting you in perspective. And I think everybody that comes in our lives are there for a reason, a purpose.
Yeah.
You know, they serve a purpose. I don't ever look at it in a negative way. I used to when I was younger, but as I got older, and everything makes sense. Everybody has its purpose. People that come into our lives are either there to either mirror something in us, that whether it's, say it's, you know, you experience it as a negative experience, but they were probably either there to mirror something within us, or they were there to help us see something that we couldn't, or help us pull some, or introduce us to something that we, you know, that we are here today doing, you know. Like, because in my experience, I went through something similar, but younger, I had seizures. So they used to give me a pill. So when I was a child, and little did I know that it had a lot to do with my central nervous system. When I, you know, from a fall I had, when I started developing, I guess it set that off through hormonal changes. Anytime around that time of the month, and then my emotions were I'm a very emotional person. So when I got emotional with my father, it was what set it off. However, I started writing. And so, of course, he would take me to the doctor, and they would end up doing an EEG. And that's when they found out where I had an issue. And they said, okay, this sets off on her central nervous system. And I started realizing that it always got triggered when I had something emotional happen. And I just, you know, little things that you put fear base on and make it bigger than what it really is. When you're younger, you don't see the difference. You know, when you're young, you see things black and white only, and it's almost like, oh my God, the world is gonna fall apart. And I think I took things to that extreme. And what happened with me is that I caused myself to have these seizures. But when I started taking the pills, no different than you know, for me, it slowed me down, almost like a movie. Think of a movie going, you know, like right now, everything is moving at its normal pace, and now I'm just slowing this right now. And I would just kind of feel it coming. So I started learning to understand what hit me, like what emotions were hitting me. And I said, okay, so this is what's happening. This is how I feel when it's about to hit me. So I would control it with breathing. Little did I know that I was doing my own work. And I ended up starting to journal things of how I felt. And then I started overlooking over a month into it, a pattern, which then I started taking a pill away. because I didn't like the feeling of it. No one
Yeah.
knew I was doing that. I would take, imagine it was Tegretol at the time, 1,000 milligrams. That thing was heavy
Wow.
for, you know, a 9-year-old. And I
Yeah.
was like, it would make me feel so drugged, so I couldn't do anything. I had no life. And I was just like, I don't want to feel like this. I felt dead inside. And I just felt like it was almost like, you know, you're just there. And I didn't like that feeling.
Yeah.
And
That's similar. Yeah. That's how I feel.
it was our, and I'm against pills. That's why I'm against medication. I'm against a lot of those things because that was the culprit of what started me to be like, you know what, screw this. I can focus on controlling this. I can figure out the root. I did the work since I was a kid. And at 16, I had my last seizure only because I forgot the last 2 pills. After that, I weaned down from 5 to 2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because they went up and down. So when I started, of course, it was a journey of understanding what triggered and everything. Once I kind of figured it out, that was it. I never had another seizure again.
Wow. That's remarkable.
Yeah, but I also started taking yoga. I understood the breathing. I understood the emotional part and how to look at things differently. So that's kind of what I teach today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, holistic healing, getting to the root, understanding your emotions, and learning how to deal with them without, even though, you know, your parents do what they can do. Not everybody has a perfect, you know, lifestyle and everything. And
yeah, I agree.
You're not going to change your parents.
No.
You know, you've got to love them for who they are and take the best out of them in order to make your life more fruitful and, you know, and break patterns.
Yeah.
So that's basically my whole life in a nutshell. So it's like basically very similar to you as well, because the pills can throw you off, your emotions, your hormonal cycle. And as women, by far, I think more than men, have more of an emotional roller coaster ride because of our body, the way we're built.
Yeah, hormones, absolutely.
Where men don't have to go, not even quite this route with, you know, compared to us women. We're going through a monthly cycle. They don't do that.
Yeah, I know.
We bear children, and that changes our hormones too. Each birth that you have. They don't have that.
I know.
No offense to you men out there. I love you guys. But you know, women do go through a lot more, and you know, our emotions get, you know, challenged. And so that's why I totally understand when things like this happen. It can set us, you know, it can set a woman, especially when pills are given to us like that.
Yeah.
It's hard. I've dealt with a lot of clients that have depression.
Oh yeah. I mean, and depression really warrants a holistic approach and the time, and then, you know, help, like guiding someone. It does take work. Like somebody has to put in that work, and sometimes that's hard to do when you're depressed. You know, having enough, because you feel like you don't have energy, and like, so like that can seem daunting, you know, like work. So I think gently guiding someone through that, or kind of like respecting where someone's at is it's important. Yeah,
and being their friend there. I've dealt with a dear friend of mine. She came to me many years ago as, you know, looking to get certified in yoga, and she did, and she has 4 beautiful girls. But I remember holding her hand every day, calling her, making sure she was okay, because depression was very big on her, and I made sure I was there for her every step. I now can say I don't need to call her quite as much anymore. She still has her moments, but she's able to handle it. She knows how to step back, and she'll say, you know, I have my times when she'll pull and her reins and shut the doors to everybody, but nothing like where she was before.
Yeah.
You know, because I know it's not something you heal overnight. It's not, I can't, I don't understand it. You know, I will never understand it.
And I was telling my friend who, he does a lot of work with suicide prevention, outstanding work. And I always say, and I've lost 2 dear friends to suicide. And I always say, you kind of have to cultivate this unlimiting unknown. and really embracing uncertainty, meaning I know I struggled with depression, maybe even mania in my 20s. And so I'm kind of accepting of the fact that I'm not sure what lies ahead. Like there could be trouble up ahead.
Right.
But I feel like I'm at least more equipped and have more self-awareness to know when something's going to start to, or know like, oh my gosh, how much did I sleep last night? Oh, not much. Don't make any big decisions today. These negative ruminations probably are more to do with like your lack of sleep last night, or where am I at in my cycle? Like just creating like that self-awareness.
But I think it's beautiful because I think now we have, with the beauty of social media is that now we have these kind of like podcasts and people like yourself and myself that are out there putting information out there that it's okay. It's not just you. And like you said, sleep is key.
Oh my gosh. So key.
For your health. Sleep is, you said, like if you didn't sleep enough, it can throw your chemicals.
Big time. To this day, I know if I don't sleep well the night before, 2 nights, whatever, I'm like, watch that brain, Erin. You know where it's going to go.
Well, I'm very much in my head all the time because I'm also, I do work for myself. So it's like, I'm always like trying to plan everything and have everything written down. And so when I don't sleep enough, when my body craves sleep, like today, I slipped in a little bit. 7 is not really sleeping in for the normal people, but for me it is because I'm up by 5:30. So to sleep in at 7 is a lot for me. But I felt like I really want to stay in bed. And I went to work. I had a client to see, and he says, "That's okay if you just want to take a nap over there and tell me what to do." I said to myself, wow, you could see it in my face. I was just still not awake. It's like my body, my brain needed to shut down, because I have so much, just so many information. This, when you're a planner and you do your own work, it's like I wear so many hats. So I'm constantly in here.
100%.
And I said, I think it's caught up to me. And I said, I have one more day to go. Tomorrow is a full day for me. I'm all over the place. So I figured Saturday I'm sleeping in.
And it's good that you're able to do that. And like, you're aware, right? Like you're like, I need more sleep,
No, it's key. And that's why it's good to let like the youth know, because I do have a lot of 20-year-olds listening. And for those young ones, as you're older, you kind of know, like you said, you are more consciously aware, but it's good to let them know that, what, if you're tired, don't run yourself to the ground.
And that's a problem with our culture here. Like, it's like, you get a badge if you don't sleep. Like, oh, I worked through the night. But in reality, like, you should be getting a badge if you got a good night's sleep, like if you slept well. But like,
I agree. Because I used to tell my daughter, she's always been in, and when she was going through her school years, and she used to be in advanced placement. So most of her classes were loaded with, you should know, loaded with homework. And I would say, you know what? Take an hour, rest a little bit. Let's do some just meditation, eat something nice. And then by a certain hour, it would be like, go take a nap or sleep, wake up early. And
that's good. She's lucky she had you.
Thank you. And she got, because she used to run herself, and when she didn't listen, she'd run herself to the ground. I said,
that was me in high school. I would stay up. So my mom was always like, Erin, you're not going to go to college unless you are first in your class. So I'd play my soccer game, go to like the glee club, practice at night. And then I'd stay up just hammering the books till like 4 a.m. And she's, and I was like, I have to get straight A's. It was just, it was just an unhealthy pattern, and then this addiction to like perfection, like getting all A's, and man, once that catches up to you. So
of course. So, and tell us a little bit about your podcast. You also mentioned you have a podcast, and what's the name of it?
It's kind of my place where I can like bring on whoever I want, who I think is interesting in the field of science. A lot of the topics are they're timely, sometimes they're controversial. Especially consider, I know some other siren or bell in New York City. But like, for example, like EMF exposure, right? Like I had like 3 an oncologist on my podcast. I've had the woman who conducted the second largest animal study on how cell phone radiation might affect us. And that's like stuff where like you'd be called a quack, like if you're like a conventional medical. But I'm like, you know, and I'm like, I understand the power of industry. So I'm like, well, I want to see what's here. So I try to those timely topics that are sometimes controversial. I just did one on vaccine passports, which I do not support at all. And I brought on, you know, a great professor who's actually in Hungary who laid out just like so many issues that I didn't even think of, you know, and
what do you say about that?
Well, he's like, first of all, they're going to hurt, you know, marginalized communities even more because there's higher rates of people not getting vaccinated in those communities. We also have the politicalization of vaccines. So for example, like right now, the EU said, any vaccine that we approve, you're good to go, you can travel. But like, what if you had the vaccine that came out of China? Or what if you have the vaccine that came out of Russia? Like all of a sudden you're not vaccinated by certain standards. So it's stuff like that. And of course that goes into, that's politics. That's not science, that's politics. That's
politics. Yeah.
Right. So stuff like that. And also the privacy issues, you know, this idea of mission creep, where like you're opening a whole new world now. So now what else are we going to be, you know, we're going to be tracked, and this is like our health. This should be kind of like more of a personal issue. Who's going to enforce these rules? Like who's going to enforce? And this is the one I'm curious about. So like when they say we need a booster shot, like, what are you going to do in that awkward time period where like somebody may be vaccinated, but they don't have the most updated vaccine? Like, are they going to be allowed in or they're not going to be allowed in? So there's just so many issues with it that I'm like, I don't like it.
I don't like it either because I had a client of mine that went and traveled, won't say where, but I don't like that now their government in that particular place that she went with her husband. Now ask her, they're setting the rules now where you have to pay X amount of dollars to basically as an insurance. So you don't, so that, you know, so if you, whether you get sick or not, it's an insurance that you're not going to say any, you know, do anything, whatever, you have to have that. And I was just like, on top of what you're paying for your trip, you have to pay this extra now. And that's only through that country. And I was like, that's kind of like, this is just getting out of control. I mean, they're just wanting to milk the system one way or the other. And I totally disagree with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on that I'm kind of questioning. It's a bit like the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, exactly. I like that one. Yeah, but that's awesome. So what's your podcast called though?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my digression there. It's called Causes or Cures.
Causes or Cures. I'm gonna have to jump on that one and listen to it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, is there anything like, where do you see yourself now from here to like 5 years from now? Any, you know, like doing in your health field? And
you know, I really think just recently I kind of started honing in on like my passion, and it's going to be kind of what I'm doing now. I hope at like maybe a more significant level or a bigger level. I really want to improve not just, I guess, people's perspective of health. I want to improve that. I want them to see it more in a holistic manner, like I'm sure you do too. I also want to challenge Big Pharma, and that's like it's like David taking on Goliath, but I'm ready for it. I know it's like, on that. Yeah, I'm ready to do that. Just because I'm just tired of it. I'm just so tired of it. And I'm tired of everything, like just the lack of focus on prevention and letting problems go. And then when they have the problems, not being able to afford the treatment for the problems, it's all designed against the person. So I'm just, so like, that's what I'm really passionate about. And I know, you know, but even a couple of years ago, I've been really hesitant about kind of like speaking out or like fighting it. And now I'm just like, you know what? this is what I feel strongly about. And I want to do this. And I mean, even like younger people, you know, you have like a lot of people who have these, you know, like fibromyalgia or things that aren't easily diagnosed, right? Or, you know, they're on like 10, I hear stories. I had a girl on my podcast. She was on like 16 pills and she was like 24 years old. And I was like,
Yeah,
how can we allow that? Like, do we not see something wrong with that? So
exactly. And it
yeah,
all comes into play with also where you hold your emotions and how it affects you in the long run. Because as you get older, um, like as a yoga teacher, I don't know if you've done yoga before or you're
oh
aware.
yeah,
Yeah, okay. So you know do you know about the chakra systems?
not 100%.
Okay,
I've
this
but go
the
ahead.
chakra system, think of it as a doctor, you look at it with your internal organs,
Right,
your
right.
basically the pineal gland is the sixth chakra, the throat chakra is your where you have your thyroid, parathyroid dealing with. So heart chakra, that's the one, the anja, you're dealing with the actual heart. So each one is an organ basically. And so that if you look at it in Eastern and Western philosophy, basically all it is taking those energy cycles, it's really taking those organs and learning to balance them out. And so what happens when we emotionally take on too much stimulation or too much or trauma hits us, it affects us emotionally to where then it affects certain part of the body. So wherever you hold those emotions, whether it's your heart, whether it's your internal organs down below, um, depending on what the trauma was or
Right.
what the issue was, that depends on where we're dealing with that area. So then you're dealing with either a way of thinking too much of the same problem over time, that it becomes then an issue. Just like anything, you become dwelling on the same problem, and before you know it, you've created now, um, how do I say it? You've created now an illness to come out. Do you see
Oh,
what I'm saying? Because
yeah.
cancer is within all of us. We have the access to either keep it suppressed under wraps, or we have the access to set it and inflame it. Then hence comes now, like you said, through food,
Mm,
through our emotions, our everyday lives, who
yeah.
and what we and who we choose to be around, what we do to ourselves, how we think.
Yeah.
And so before you know it, you've created either, and if you're repeating, say you have heart problems from generations, or breast cancer from generations, it's the same pattern psychologically that the family is repeating from one generation to the other. And then they find themselves with partners that are similar to their mother and father or their guardians, depending if they don't have, it's whoever's taking care of them. And they
Yeah.
repeat the same pattern and they pass it on to their children and so forth until someone decides to break that pattern. But it's all emotional. So again, it gets targeted here on our internal organs. So it's like if you have IBS, then you're not one to really, you hold on to those emotions in the gut area.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you'll end up choosing foods,
Yeah.
unconsciously you start choosing foods that are that are extreme, that are
Mm,
not going to help you digest the stuff that you need to digest
right.
properly, and then you find yourselves getting either constipated, or you do things the opposite where you'll end up having the opposite effect of it.
Yeah.
So
That's so true.
yeah, same happens with the throat chakra one. We have a lot of people with thyroid, either overactive thyroids or underactive. And technically what happened to them as a child is that they either when they were with their at home, either one parent or both, but mainly the dominant one, did not allow that child to express. So the child held their anger, they're exposed, they couldn't hold it, and it got trapped here. So when they get older, what happens? They release, and they either extremely get angry and they say things they shouldn't say, or they don't know how to say no when
Mm,
things happen. They don't know, to the people that they are, say if they have partners, they don't know how to, they'll allow that manipulation to take over because they can't seem to express their
mm,
expressions. And so what happens is they hold it here,
mm.
and then cancer comes about from that. So it's a lot of like mind body connection with the yoga. So once you learn how to undo that, and all it takes is really learning how to journal, how to write things, expressing yourself through paper to overcome and balance your chakra out. Being able to do this, and it allows you to basically, like a skill, overcome those issues that you were either not 100% there at one point as a child. So you don't repeat them and you don't pass them on to your children because now you're aware. So that's kind of like what the whole chakra system is about balancing. But again, it comes back again to what you were saying, eating, nourishing yourself, learning to balance those emotional areas, learning to understand what sets it off, sleeping, and and learning not to like depend on those, like big pharma and medication, things are like doing things naturally through herbs and and just vitamins and things like that that you need, wherever that needs your body to take, like vitamin D. If you don't expose yourself to the sun, then take vitamin D to balance that out in your system, so things like that. So I find it very fascinating, the whole world of the mind and body, and holistic doctors like yourself that are aware about not going into and doing it more organically. I love that,
body. And for me too, in the last few years, I've really focused on the spiritual dimension. That's been like hugely helpful. And it's but it's interesting because like a lot of the people I come across in like the scientific community are like, like atheist, and also they just don't believe in anything unless it's, that's not material.
Right.
Whereas I feel like in the last years, and I'm very scientific. I work with complex data every day, but I think there is still like a spiritual dimension, and I recognize it, and I've cultivated it, whatever that is. I'm remaining very humble about it, but I know like whatever it is and whatever I'm cultivating is healthy and good because it's helping me. And I know everybody's definition of spiritual and spiritual realm, God, whatever that is, whatever it is for you. For me, like kind of like nourishing that and letting it kind of grow and learning more about it and how it relates to my physical health and my mental health has been very, very, very healing.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And how long has it since you entered that whole spiritual part of that side of journey for yourself?
So it's interesting. So I dated a guy who was like an atheist, and it was really like, I found myself like demoralized and like depressed by it. Not because I'm like any kind of hardcore, like, God is this, like, but there was something inside me that was like craving something else. And it was like something hungry and couldn't find the right food, right? And only needed one type of food. So it means that I needed to search for something, or like, why is this creating distress? Like, why is this making me want to go out and search? And kind of just being aware of that. So I just started reading, I started meditating, I started to try to really figure out, what is that inside me and what is it trying to connect to? And I'm still doing it. So it's like, it's going to be a lifelong process.
Oh yeah. It's a never ending story. Cause I've been very spiritually awakened as a young child, I guess, since my seizures. I guess I've had, it connected me in such a deep way, which is kind of hard to put in words.
I get it.
When I got into yoga, and I started it very young, again, doing yoga at 11, but I found it in the physical aspect. And over the years, I started dipping more into like understanding it in the, the realms of the physical part of it. But it took a while. I think I was probably after I had my daughters when it started hitting more in a deeper spiritual connection, where I understood the chakras at a deeper level, because I went through a divorce after my daughter when she was 6. So it rocked it rocked me a lot. So that's when I started doing the work more. And I came into really understanding the chakra system, the psychology of the mind, and how the mind is always connected to the body through those emotions, and how those emotions. And so everything I did as a child, healing myself, kind of came together, and it helped me understand, this is what happened, and each chakra develops in like the root chakra gets developed from the moment you're conceived in your mother's womb to the age of 18 months. So whatever you're feeling, because we are attached to the umbilical cord to our mothers, her emotions, so whatever she is fearing or excited, we are going to feel those emotions. So now we take up a piece of that, which now is what becomes our foundation. So if she has abandonment issues, for example, you're going to feel them too.
You're gonna feel
it gets passed on to you. That's why they say sometimes ancestral mothers, that connecting to the womb is intense, because you're getting her emotions. So if you have a mother that went through a lot, mental or physical abuse, that child is going to feel those emotions, or those, even though she or he may not know why they trigger at an older age. They don't understand why it's triggering. It's a lot to do with the womb as a mother, because it was the root chakra, that foundation. So it makes a big difference. So when you get to be into the second chakra, the sacral chakra, that's the chakra that connects the male and the female. That's also the creativity. That is also the one that brings our sensuality, our flow, our essence. So if the mother and fathers, our parents, don't have that bonding, and they don't bond with the child, or it's too much mother bonding but not enough father, now you've thrown the child's, you've basically created an unbalanced, second chakra. So that they'll have a deficiency or or excessive. So when they get to their sexuality, they'll either extremely go to one, it gets very complicated, but it's a web. But it got me very interested into like really going deep and diving deep into that whole world, and looking at it in a perspective of like, I see, and how to be able to heal each and every chakra. And the first three are the main key, those are the physical chakras, and as you go into the heart, that bridges the physical to the spiritual. So you have to heal those three in order for you to be able to rise up to the spiritual part, and in a healthy way, otherwise, that's where you have a like, for example, you look at the cults, people that are in cults, those, like, remember Manson time? I don't know, remember that whole cult thing where you saw those people?
Oh, yeah.
When you see those type of people that follow those they're not up here. They've had a lot of trauma, so those first three chakras are, and they need that, and they're so used to having someone that either manipulated them in their family, so they are prone to that, or they didn't have that love, or somewhere along the line, those three chakras got rocked. And those people are so prone to getting attached to someone like that. So that's where you see those excessive, issues or behaviors go extreme. It's so I was very fascinated at a young age about psychology that I decided to dive deep into it and do the work myself, myself on the ones we go through for our own, in our own family lineage and all that stuff. So it's pretty cool, and I love the way you've done yourself the same thing, because you've written 2 books. What's the second book about?
It's called Yours in Wellness. It's a parody, but it's basically how the whole thing is like the worst of big pharma will fuel the worst of wellness. So like, there are like snake oil salesmen out there. There's some like, take this supplement, take that supplement, and or take this expensive detox drink, or do that. And so sometimes I think, but obviously it's like the big pharma stuff is fueling that, and there's really awesome stuff in wellness. Like, it sounds like what you're doing is really awesome and can be really healing for people. And you're not like pitching, you're not, well, I don't know if you're not like pitching me something without like, right. Like, you're not here, take this. Your life is going to be amazing. Like, this is going to cure everything that's wrong with you. Like, you're talking about work.
I'm telling you to do the work. I'm telling you to journal and figure out how to do the work,
and you can tell someone else how to do the work. So that's far different than like what I'm talking about, which is like take this pill, it's going to cure everything. Like, you know, it's kind of very similar to what Big Pharma does. And there are some companies really thriving off of that approach. And so it's a parody on that. And to kind of get people back to, again, and I have like a bizarre sense of humor. So I wrote it like the screw, I wrote like the screw tape letters. But the whole point of it is like, there needs to be a balance.
Yes.
There needs to be a balance, and we have to find what that balance is. And right now there's not a balance. So
yes, I agree. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, it has been an honor having you on board. I love your work. I love what you've been talking about. And I definitely look forward to popping onto that podcast and taking a look at your work and listening to all your different episodes you have going on.
Yeah.
And also your wellness, your website. So I'm going to also put those below so they can go ahead and, you know, take a look and jump on board.
.com.
Absolutely. And do you have any word of wisdom for our listeners today? Anything you would like to tell them?
Yeah, if you feel like something is wrong, and this might be related to like medicine, a relationship, a job, tune in. Don't be afraid to tune in. It seems scary and daunting, but that's where it started for me, my healing process, and kind of like getting on the path that I needed to get on. It's not going to be a perfect process. It's going to be a worthwhile process. So that would be
I love it. I love it. Well, there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today with us. And I love your work. I'm also gonna, I love your Instagram. It's pretty interesting.
It's quirky.
I love it. I love quirkiness. So that says a lot about me too.
I'm like the nerd with like the sense of humor gone wild. I'm like,
I love it. I'm surrounded by nerds. My kid is a nerd, so she's the same way. I love it. I welcome it in. It's beautiful because you guys, you know, provide good information out there. I love that.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's about helping and giving out that information to people that are seeking it. So
definitely. Yeah. Definitely. And likewise, thank you so much. And yeah, it was great to join you today.
Thank you. Thank you. And I definitely look forward to seeing more of you. I want to look into that book of your life. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting just to see people thrive from what we were what we considered at one point in our lives. Oh my God, this is not, you know, it's like a disaster. But in the end, it's basically what made us.
Exactly. It was like it might have turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to you.
Exactly. No, it is. And I look back, I said, I wouldn't be here today or be who I am today if it wasn't for those, you know, the experiences that I went through. Right. So each one for me was a stepping stool, basically or a stepping stone. Let's put it that way. I like that better. For, you know, for learning.
Yes.
You know, each and every emotion that I've had to delegate, that I've asked to heal. So each one has led me to something. Even people I've met, people I was intimate with, people that that were there even just for a short time, that I always said, oh, what happened to them? They disappeared, you know, just like that. As quick as they came, they disappeared. And you did nothing wrong. And you're like, where'd they go? Yeah. But then, you know, I look back, I'm like, you know, they served their purpose. They came during a time I really was in need, you know, and well, all you could do is wish them well and move on.
And you're okay.
Oh yeah. No, it's just like, you know, I used to say when I was younger, it's just like, what did I do? You know?
Same.
Did I do something wrong? And then I realize now back, because you know, the cycle repeats itself in different parts of your life. And then I'm like, they were here for a purpose.
Yeah.
You know, they were here to introduce me to this. You know, like I had a wonderful, very knowledgeable young lady who was in the process of graduating into acupuncture, for example. And I never had experienced it. Went through a car accident around that time. She pops in my world. And she reminds me a lot of my daughter, you know, that personality. And we clicked, but I introduced her to yoga, and she introduced me to acupuncture and the healing aspect of it, which I found it fascinating, because I almost could not believe that this little needle, but I do know about, you know, trigger points, so I do understand it. But I was just like, wow, just these little things hit a certain area and she opened up. You know, sometimes those floodgates, you know, they might have been painful at the moment, but it healed me.
Yeah.
You know, and I was started asking her, okay, let's do my eye, you know, because I do wear glasses. So I said, okay, I see a little blurry here. And she would put that needle in a certain area. And then all of a sudden, after she was done, that blurriness would go away. And I was
Wow.
like,
That's amazing.
it's amazing. When I said I couldn't if I couldn't turn my neck and I had a little tweak, and she would just go ahead and put the needle, move it, and tell me to move my head a certain way. And I would move it, and then all of a sudden she'd move it again, and she just released that issue. And I was like, oh my God. So you see, it's like it was a different awakening for me to understand that you can heal through acupuncture when I didn't know anything about it.
Right.
So after that period went away, that was it. She went her way. She got certified. She graduated.
Yeah.
And I remember reaching out and I was like, hey, how are you? Can we meet up just for, you know, for coffee, whatever?
Nothing.
That was it. I said, you know what? I think it served a purpose. She was here to introduce me to acupuncture. And from that day,
part in my journey.
Absolutely. No, she was here. She was like this beautiful angel that popped in my life around that time that I really needed it the most. And she helped me so much to understand such a beauty of an art and a tradition that's been healing for so many years. It's old, you know, this is old, you know, so it's like, and to see that and her love for it, her passion she had. And I was like, wow. So she introduced me to something so beautiful that it stayed with me.
That's amazing.
I'm very big with acupuncture, and I'm a big believer about it because it works. It works. It's a very much beautiful practice, you know, so I hands on to those, you know, healers as well. I love it. So I think she came into my life around that time, and that's why I say everybody comes in either small spurts, some are permanent, some are not. Just take it in and do what you can with it, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyways, thank you so much for joining me, and I thank you everybody for coming. And if you haven't joined us yet and you're just listening, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I love you all. Till next time. Thank you, Dr. Reed.
Bye. Yeah, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day there.
Thank you.